Welcome to the first annual rant session featuring Preston Pysh, James Lavish, and Dr. Susie Reilly, who, by the way, is one of my most popular podcast guests. I don't know if you know that, Susie, but literally, I get people emailing me every single day saying, I loved that Susie, the dentist that sold her house for Bitcoin. And I'm like, yeah, actually, and I know her pretty well. How are you guys?
Go ahead, guys.
Are we supposed to answer?
Yeah.
Are we going to go in turns?
Yes, you're always first, James. Go.
Look at you acting like a podcast virgin there, James. How do I do this? I'm
so nervous. I don't know what to say.
Well, I'll have some topics, but first, just how are you guys doing? I feel like things are really crazy right now. Stuff's popping off like meme coins, including Coco and some random gold miner that is maybe buying Bitcoin. And then I don't know, there's crazy things happening. The halving's around the corner. We've got conferences, travel. What's up?
I'm actually pretty nervous about the Coco meme coin going on right now. Like that actually makes me nervous because I eat dark chocolate. Like my wife, Victoria, you guys know her. She calls me a chocolate monster. And so this might be an issue for us if we can't get chocolate.
I'm confused because I thought this was actually the price of cocoa.
It is out of control. Have you not seen the chart?
It's trading like a meme coin.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah. That's what I was tracking. It was like the actual, like you need to be stacking like chocolate bars right now.
Yeah. We need to be stacking
Rudy Havenstein tweeted a box of Hershey's and said, have fun staying poor. It was really funny.
I mean, it just talks to, I think in the coming year and a half, I think that you're going to see some weird perturbations like we saw during COVID with supply chains and commodities acting all strange. And I'm watching the oil chart. I wouldn't say that it's reversed and is in a bullish trend yet, but it's looking like it could do something like that in the coming 6 months. But yeah, I mean, it's the supply chains, the commodities, the everything in the face of fiat is just going to start getting stranger and stranger. And we've been talking about it for a while, but when you see the price, like the price chart of the Coca, I think it's just like one of many things that are bound to be happening here in the coming year.
Do any of you guys understand what's happening with this miner that shot up like 15,000% or something? What happened?
They just
you're talking about the gold miner.
Yes. Yeah. The gold miner. It was a press release that they were buying 24,800 Bitcoin. I mean, it's a penny stock, typical release, nothing burger that worked out well for them in the short term.
Yeah, I looked at it really quickly and I think it's got like a $15 million market cap now, which is like...
it was 1 million and they were buying 1.7 billion of Bitcoin. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel Michael Saylor's been vindicated a little bit here, after taking so much heat from mainstream media for years, while during the dip, and he was just buying and buying and buying, and now he's literally just printing Bitcoin now. So it's satisfying and a little bit soothing to see.
It's just so demonstrative. Like what he's done is so demonstrative in that he didn't take a 10% position with his treasury. He took it was like all chips in. And so when you do that, it's just so in your face on display that it's nearly impossible to unsee, especially now that his company is tens of billions of dollars in market cap. So he's clearly a large cap company at this point. And I forget where he was at in the S&P as far as like ranking in the top 500 companies, but it's like 300 or somewhere in that range. Yeah. And it's a little hard to not see it. And I can only imagine, another 6 months, what that's going to be. Like he'll probably be, I don't know the market caps, but I would imagine it somewhat goes parabolic there once you start getting into like the top 50 as far as the weighting goes. But it is just going to be so in your face, so in your face as this thing continues to play out. What were you going to say, Susie?
Well, isn't it kind of the same with Bukele? Like, haven't you seen he's been vindicated? And did you see the tweets he had about how all of mainstream media, the financial media, was just so, willing to tear him down and just he's going to destroy his country. And so he had several tweets in a row saying something like, still haven't seen the story yet on how this trade has worked out for me, how my Bitcoin, and like every day for a while, it was like, still no one, crickets, it was, which I thought was hilarious.
You guys are going to the Halving in El Salvador, right? The party. What is that exactly?
James, are you going? Because I know Susie's going.
I cannot go.
Oh, jeez.
Wow.
Oh, I thought you were going.
Got so much travel this spring with kids and colleges and blah blah. Yeah.
So it's not a conference, right? It's like more of a celebration, or what is it?
I don't know.
It's just a party put on by, I think, Big Sean Harris is kind of heading it up with the Meme Factory. And so, it's just going to be a party. And sounds like
you don't say no to the, you do not say no to the memers. You do not say no to the memers. Yeah.
Are you going to kind of count down from block to block? Like, how are you going to do it? Do you know?
Considering they're like 2 weeks
ahead. Fireworks.
Like, there's a little bit of a window there, right?
Coin Stories is brought to you by Bitdeer, where the power of Bitcoin mining is at your fingertips. As a publicly traded leader, Bitdeer's global reach and scale means they're everywhere you need them to be, ensuring you're part of the thriving Bitcoin economy. Bitdeer's not just mining, they are industry pioneers, and Bitdeer stands alone as the only vertically integrated, technology-focused Bitcoin mining company. What does that mean? Well, they're not just deploying, but developing the latest tech to make Bitcoin mining more efficient and effective. With the industry's most experienced leadership team, innovation is in their DNA, and it shows, with a quarter of their workforce dedicated to research and development, pushing the boundaries of what's possible in Bitcoin mining. Now they're leveraging years of expertise in data center and cloud management into high-performance computing through a recently announced partnership with NVIDIA. Join Bitdeer in reshaping the world of Bitcoin mining. Learn more at bitdeer.com and explore how they are pioneering the future today.
Yeah. Poor Susie got roped into this whole podcast thing because of our,
I know. I'm just like,
Susie, I'm telling you guys, Susie is literally like this untapped gem in the podcast world. And
I know why we're here. Why are we here?
Well, and I think her story is so fascinating. So I love that we're all chatting about the crazy things happening. But it's funny because this all started, on a Twitter thread, and someone tagged me and Preston because you tweeted, James, Powell, appropriate to slow pace of asset runoff soon. Translated, the reverse repo is getting to a level that will cause the Fed to compete with the Treasury for liquidity, and so we will soon end QT. And so someone wanted you to explain this and get you on a show. So here's your stage, sir.
Okay, so what I was talking about is, so Powell has press conference, he had the Powell presser, and he gets up there and he starts talking about inflation and how they're, managing it at the Fed, and he's a little bit dovish, and people are trying to figure out what he's talking about. And at some point, somebody was asking about QT, and are they going, what does he think about QT? And he said it will be appropriate to start kind of slowing that down, and that'll give him a lot more runway. So what was he talking about? And Preston, you and I have talked about this before, but basically the way it's working right now is the Treasury is using the reverse repo to kind of fund its auctions, and they're doing a lot of short-term, like really short Treasury auctions, T-bills. And as they do that, they've been drawing money out of the reverse repo. And so, because basically reverse repo is just a bunch of money market funds, and they can own T-bills, or they can use the reverse repo. If T-bills are showing them a better rate, they'll buy some T-bills, and that's basically what's been happening. So now the reverse repo that had gotten all the way up to like $2.5 trillion, which is really just, it's this giant slush fund that was created from QE back in 2020, 2021. So they've got this huge slush fund. They're running massive deficits, as we know, and they're using that to kind of fund these deficits. So it's adding liquidity into the system. And so there's a lot of debate about this, but the reality is, as you're running these deficits and you're drawing money out of that reverse repo, which is just, you're putting it into the system, it's kind of inflationary. But basically what I'm saying is that when that reverse repo is drained, then the Treasury needs to find new capital. And it's going to do this by issuing longer dated treasuries. And when they do that, it's going to cause the banks to use the reserves, because they're going to have to go out to the reserves to fund these. And so right now you've got about $3.5 trillion in bank reserves. But when those reserves drop to a certain level, then the Fed and the Treasury start getting nervous. Why? Because if you remember back to 2019, there was this liquidity crisis right before this whole COVID situation. Back in September of 2019, the overnight rate spiked, and it was basically what happened was you had a confluence of factors, right? So you had the banks, they were out of liquidity at the same time that the Treasury was issuing a pile of unexpected debt, and so. And there were a lot of reasons for this. So basically, what happened was there was companies were paying taxes, and so they were holding on to cash they were going to have to pay taxes, corporate taxes on. Treasury was asking for more liquidity by issuing more debt than expected. Foreign central banks were kind of hoarding dollars at the same time. So it made a mess, and so the repo market spiked. Okay, so knowing all that, reverse repo is about to get drained. You've got the reserves that are dropping from 3.5 trillion down to what the Fed and Treasury have said before is about 2.5 trillion is where they start to get nervous. They don't want it to drop below that. So before it hits that, they're going to start, slowing down QT. And then when it hits QT, I think they're just going to stop. If it hits 2.5 trillion, they're just going to stop QT, because what we can't have is you can't have the Fed competing with the Treasury for liquidity in the market. Like they can't have that, because that we've already seen what has happened in the 30-year Treasury auction back in November. You had the 20-year auction that was a mess back in, I think it was January. So they don't want to have disruption in the Treasury market, and so they're just going to stop QT. That's my opinion. That's what that tweet meant. I hope that kind of clears it up.
James, on the long end, the duration here, I just don't think that they can issue long duration bonds at any type of scale anymore, because I think the market's just not going to. The auction is going to be so disastrous, because everybody's looking at this inflation and they're saying it's not going away. And so if that's truly the opinion of the market, good luck trying to issue something that's 30 years in duration into the market.
It's a good point. I think it will happen, but it's going to happen with rate premiums. And that's what we're going to finally see. You're going to finally see some rate premiums that come into the market, because you're going to have we've talked of the bond vigilantes before, where they are just demanding higher rates. So as we see inflation continue, it's sticky, right? So.
But isn't that like a fire alarm that's just screaming to
Absolutely.
The overall broader
which is why you have real economists, or PhD economists who are finally waking up and saying, this is a problem. You had Larry Fink this morning, I think in his BlackRock letter, say that I am worried. I am seriously, deeply concerned with the deficits we're running and just the sheer amount of debt that we're going to have to issue to cover those deficits.
I ran a quote from Citadel CEO Ken Griffin saying that it's like one of the most underappreciated risks.
Which points exactly to your point, Preston, is that at when do we just stop seeing, when does liquidity dry up? And I don't think it's going to dry up. I don't think we're going to have an auction fail, but I do think that we're going to see some serious tails. And we're going to see demand for higher rates. And it's partly because the Fed's about to lower rates in the face of inflation that's sticking over 3%. So, it's nuts, right? So
it's crazy.
All right. So we're Susie, are you in Hawaii now? I don't want to dox you, but is that all right? So what is it like out there? What's the economy like out there? Because it's a tourist destination. What are you seeing out there?
Yeah, so tourism is definitely down. So it's interesting. It dried up during COVID, and then it kind of came back with a vengeance. And now I think it's down like 30%. So typically we see a lot of tourists from Asia, Japan, China, Korea, and it's just, I think there is where we're really seeing the drop off interest, and it's because the dollar's so strong, so their money is just not going as far here.
Are you noticing a higher percentage of boomers out at restaurants and in like and just out and about in tourist areas? I mean, not that you go and hang out in tourist areas, but I mean, is that?
I would say.
I thought you were implying that she just hangs out with boomers.
What do you mean? I am a boomer. No, no. So definitely we see like it's sort of a strange age gap. It's either boomers or I'll see the young influencer types. Early 20s. Yeah,
the YOLOs.
The experiential spenders. They don't have the money for the assets, so they're spending on experiences. Meanwhile, the boomers are gobbling up all the assets. So the only ones looking at open houses here in Missouri.
Yeah, and they're buying up houses here. It's crazy. And I've got Californians all around me now. The money that's come into Vegas is from California is incredible, and they're an older demographic, no doubt. And so yeah, it's kind of crazy, Preston. I do think that we are going to see some sort of disruption at some point, and that's going to force the Fed and the Treasury to just team back up and load up with more liquidity.
Luke told me that he thinks going into the second half of the year that it's the dollar that just gets it's going to get taken down. The DXY is going to get weakened. Yeah. And to Susie's point, I mean, she just told you the dollar's so strong, they're not seeing anybody coming from Asia and all this. So it kind of plays right into kind of where they're at with the dollar. It's an election year, so you know that they're not going to just like let everything just completely become impaired and cascading impairment and contagion and whatnot. Like that's just
not an option.
They can't allow that to happen this year.
Yeah, I talked to him a little about that on the show, and he said that we are in fiscal dominance. He said that it's not out of the question. In fact, it could be likely that we even see a melt up because there is so much liquidity, and they will need to weaken the dollar. But just so I have, just so I'm following everything you said, James, because you threw a lot of bond just meat at us, and I just want to make sure I can cut it up into smaller pieces and digest it. So I know that Janet Yellen shifted things over to the short end, right? That was kind of smart of her to keep things functioning,
which we had predicted that was going to happen last year.
Yes,
because it made sense.
And then the reverse repo, that's basically been the demand for a lot of these short-term bills. But also, I know you didn't bring this up, but I talked about this with Larry as well as with Luke, this like ISDA letter, right? That they want to basically remove the reserve requirements so that these banks can take on as many treasuries as possible, which I don't know if you guys want to weigh in on. But so now the reverse repo is drawing down. And so that's a signal that potentially they're going to have to step in and issue more liquidity, but maybe on the long end, but that would cause problems for the bond market. Am I following this?
Yeah, no, you're following along. I started writing part one of my newsletter this last weekend, was just covering what ISDA is, right?
Yeah.
So what is
ISDA?
It's an international swap and derivative association, and it's basically this association that was founded in the 80s to kind of manage this whole massively growing derivatives market. And
but
this
is
thing
it a front for big banks, James? Is it just big banking?
Okay.
I mean, basically,
that's a good
proxy
question.
for prime brokers.
Yeah. So basically, it's managed by bankers, and so it makes sense because this stuff can be really confusing. This stuff can be and it can be dangerous if you don't know what you're doing. So it makes sense for you to have experienced people in those positions. But the strange thing is, they're all still working for their banks while they're working for while they're working for ISDA. And so now they're proposing that what they're proposing is to remove the SLR requirement, which is,
of course,
it's the leverage requirement. So it's not they have the capital. It's just whether or not that leverage requirement, supplementary leverage requirement, keeps them in check, because there's really no other requirements anymore. But so once they take that out, what they're saying is they're going to remove treasuries from that leverage equation. So now it's completely considered cash. It's like, it's not even considered a risk asset anymore. It's just cash, and they can own as much as they want. It's not in that equation anymore. which is
Wait,
just
James. So
mind blowing.
Yeah, just to dumb it down for people. So when I read, which your newsletter is always phenomenal. I had never even heard of ISDA. So I'm so thankful every week for it to, just to be able to learn. But so that's how I took it, is basically these banks are asking to not show treasuries on their leverage ratio. Like they want to remove that. So then what would prevent them from owning as many treasuries as they want and then,
nothing.
and then they're not lending to, right? Then lending dries up to.
Susie, if it doesn't make sense, it means you understand what's happening.
Okay.
You got it. That's right.
Well, and they did this in 2020, right? And the reason that all of this began is because of the 08-09 financial crisis, and they wanted to prevent a systemic risk. But now it's just so leveraged to the point that they need to remove these requirements just to keep things liquid.
Pretty much. And so the banks just want to have, they want to have the flexibility. The Treasury really needs them to have the flexibility.
Yeah.
Then you have, we haven't talked about this. You've got that BTFP program that has been shut down. And so what happens when a bank gets into a problem now, right? So it used to be that you use the overnight window only if you have this, if it's extraneous, it is an emergency. You don't use the overnight window if you're a bank. Why? Because it has a negative stigma. Why? Because it means that you're basically using a Discover card to pay off your Visa. So it's like it's like it leaves you with a little bit of a stink.
But they don't have to reveal it, right? Isn't it? They get to access it.
No,
that's where this gets interesting.
This is something that you have to reveal. The BTFP was hidden for 5 years if you used it.
Yeah,
BTFP. The overnight window is. You have to reveal that you've used this. It's like a really bad mark on your credit, report if you're a bank and you use this. But now what they're saying is, hey, by the way, if you want to have access to this facility, you need to use it regularly. So they're
totally
forcing
whitewashing
people to use it. So now it's become normalized. Wow. So it's like, if you want to have a credit card, you're going to have to use it regularly, or else you can't have that credit card. And so they're normalizing it. So now you have no idea is Citibank in trouble? Is
everybody's been using it, so we have no idea
or not? I mean, it's hard to tell. It's a mess. Yeah, and that's what that's the next thing.
It is purposely inducing noise into the system.
Correct. Yeah.
At the end of if this was a communications channel, you would purposely blow a horn every 5 seconds, on purpose, so that you couldn't fully hear the message. That's basically what they're doing.
I wanted to ask you guys, do you think it's likely that we will have this melt up? And let me know if you have the same sentiment that I do now. I used to worry about some sort of credit event and massive deflationary crash, but now it's almost like I've been lulled into this feeling of, well, the second that happens, they're going to patch it up, right? They're going to just jump in, or could they? I mean, I've literally had guests say, well, what if they don't? Because they want it to.
They won't. They can't.
The Silicon Valley Bank was that in spades. They could have had as much deflation as they wanted if they just took their hands off the controls, let that play out for 2 months. I mean, you would have had so much impairment and so much meltdown in fiat. It would have blown everybody's minds. You would have had all the equity indices just get obliterated, but they didn't want that.
Failures of banks. Yeah.
And so the problem is where the problem has now manifested itself is on the bank balance sheets. And so good luck hiding that. They can't allow it to unravel. So people that are making that argument, they're not addressing where the problem, which doorstep is it at now? Well, it's at the bank. So you can't allow that to play out. You have to always backstop that.
So what we're going to see is, in my opinion, what we're going to see is orchestrated bailouts in back rooms. And so what will happen is you'll have a credit event that may be spurred on by a failure of a commercial real estate piece of a big piece of commercial real estate, and a regional bank really gets hit hard with that. Mm-hmm. And so they're impaired. And then they got to go borrow money in order to shore up their balance sheet so they don't fail. And then they'll be ushered into some sort of, bailout or takeover basically by one of the G-SIBs, a Citigroup or a JP Morgan or a Wells Fargo. They'll buy them up and they'll sweep it under the rug and they'll line up the next one. And that's kind of what I expect to start happening in the next, 6 to 12 months.
Yeah, 6 months.
It's time for a quick break to hear these messages from my partners who make this podcast possible. First up, Bitcoin 2024. The world's largest Bitcoin conference is coming to Nashville this July. Join us for 3 amazing days of keynotes, panels, networking events, workshops, concerts, and my 3rd annual Women of Bitcoin brunch. The Bitcoin conference is actually where I launched my podcast almost 3 years ago. You never know what can happen or who you can meet here. Head to b.tc/conference and use the code HODL, HODL, for 10% off. Next up, Coinkite. Coinkite makes everything you need to safely self-custody your Bitcoin, including the Coldcard Wallet, the cold storage device I use for safekeeping my Bitcoin. You can verify the source code, it's ultra secure, and it's easy to use even if you're a beginner. Head to their site in my show notes and get a 5% discount with promo code CoinStories. Next up, CrowdHealth. Health insurance costs are sky high, and it's money that feels wasted if you don't need a doctor. That's why CrowdHealth offers a community-based alternative by crowdfunding healthcare with other Bitcoiners. I get to avoid traditional insurance fees and support real people, not mega corporations. Visit joincrowdhealth.com/Natalie and join us. And finally, the why of Bitcoin is easy to grasp, but the how can be so confusing. The Bitcoin Way is your professional Bitcoin IT and security team that offers personalized one-on-one support to guide you through cold storage, setting up a node, inheritance planning, privacy best practices, and more. Don't take my word for it. Take 82-year-old customer Bill's.
Give the Bitcoin Way a try. You will be well on your way to owning and protecting the greatest money ever discovered.
Set up your free 30-minute consultation with the Bitcoin Way today. All right, back to the show. Well, you're right. I mean, everything's been sort of cracking. There was like Deutsche Bank about a year and a half ago. There were some tremors there. And then there was obviously Silicon Valley. There was New York, the regional bank in New York recently. So it's like little things keep happening, but I am surprised that there hasn't been a greater contagion and that the economy has been so resilient. But I guess, I mean, you guys have told me on the show, it's just they pumped in so much money. It takes a while for that to make its way out and for the malinvestments to sort of come to the surface, right?
But not just that. Look at New York Community Bank. Look how quickly that was resolved. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was literally resolved in a matter of days. Boom, done, and it's been rescued, and we're on to the next thing. I mean, they're waiting. So the Fed has gotten into the back rooms of all these companies, and they know where the risks are now. Prior to Silicon Valley, they were completely ignorant. They were not paying attention to the risks on these balance sheets and for these banks. And now they're all over it. So they're ready for the next one. They're like, okay, well, probably going to have, Blackstone walk away from this piece of property, and it's going to cause an impairment with this bank. And so we're going to kind of, we're going to usher in a rescue. And I fully expect this to be orchestrated and kind of orderly as it goes along until it's not.
Natalie, this is what I would tell you is coming next. So with the backstop facility for the Treasury market, where they basically were doing yield curve control, like if your bonds were down 25%, just put them on deposit here at the backstop facility, and then they're only down 15%. And you don't have to realize any of this impairment. Where this is going next is in commercial real estate. And so like we're already seeing properties getting marked down 80% from their last listing, that their last mark that they had. And as some of this gets really nasty and gets really impaired, they're going to have to do some type of backstop, some type of, just put the certificate on deposit here, and you don't have to deal with the 80% loss on your books, because it's going to be so destructive. And a lot of this has to do with them not being able to get inflation under control, because all the cap rates are a premium on top of the inflation gauge that is being displayed. And we're lying about the gauge on top of that. And I think the commercial real estate market is sniffing that out. And that's why you're seeing these 80% marks down from their last listing price. But as this heats up, as the commercial real estate thing really heats up into the coming year, they're going to have to backstop this somehow. I don't know what that facility is going to be called. I'm sure it's going to be something super ambiguous and confusing.
I don't know, Preston. I think their backstop is to usher in really quick bailouts and sales to the GSIBs. I think they're just going to we're going to have a huge consolidation of banks, regional banks into the big banks. That's probably what's going to happen. And partially what you're saying, I believe, it really depends if we have fallout from a major player. If there's a major player that is,
which there will be
impaired, there should be, likely. Yeah. So there is definitely uncertainty, to answer your question. For sure.
Is this part of the financial repression that is being predicted? Because I know, Preston, you sent me a chart that Luke recently added to his report, and it was really about how the U.S. ran the 1946 to 1979 financial repression era playbook from 2009 to now. But unlike then, when the debt to GDP fell from 106% to under 40, now it's actually rising from 70 to 100% because of how much they're printing, essentially.
Yes. Yeah. And that's the big misnomer. So you'll find a lot of people will say, oh, this is analogous to back during this period of time. And it's somewhat humorous to people that have studied the history and understand the numbers, like Luke so eloquently lays out in his report, where it's like, okay, so you want to compare this to post World War II, when we literally saw debt to GDP go from 106 down to 40. Okay, well, let's play it out from the great financial crisis to now. And that's exactly what's not happening, with a projection that it's going to be at, 170% plus within, 20 years from now. And I think that's being generous, because you're not really, you're doing a linear interpretation with some of those numbers, which it's not going to be a linear interpretation.
It's not. And
is that why Lynn always compares this time to the 1940s as opposed to the 70s? Because inflation was high. They did yield curve. They had to eventually do yield curve control, right? But they were able to sort of drag down the debt levels.
I disagree with Lynn on that a little bit. I think that because it really plays into Luke's point when he's laying out this timeline, because he's saying from like 1946 to 1960s, you saw debt to GDP reduced by 60%.
Yeah.
Right. And so when we're looking at that and we're saying, oh, that's analogous to now, I don't think that it is analogous to now. I think that we're in a drastically different scenario than we were back then. And when you look at where the United States was and how it was taking global market share for productivity and building with sound economic principles, and supply chains were being constructed here, it's not the same. I'm sorry, it is not the same. What we're seeing right now with respect to supply chains is that they've been optimized for just in time Lean Six Sigma type things. And there can't be even a hesitation for a split second, or else everything falls apart and your cocoa prices blow out and it looks like a meme coin.
Can you guys explain to me, how was Clinton able to get us to a surplus? I mean, he pointed out that debt to GDP during I think it was the 80s into 90s, that went from 30% to 50% before he said the Clinton stock bubble allowed surpluses. So what exactly happened?
This is like a second derivative movement, right? This is like saying inflation is not happening anymore, but yet inflation is going up. Yeah. And what you're doing is you're talking about the rate of change of what it was. So when Clinton did that, when you go back and you look, it was no longer going up. It was flatlining and slightly going down, but it was this brief moment in time, but the amount of spending was still egregious compared to, it wasn't like we were things were under control by any shape of the imagination, but it's a play on terminology.
Got it. And the stock bubble was really it was the tax receipts from the 90s tech bubble,
which that point is why another reason why you're not going to see any of this slowdown in the markets.
Right.
People saying that we're going to have this big 1930s, 1931 collapse in equities do not understand the fiscal deficit issues that we're dealing with in this country, and what we need from a tax revenue standpoint, that they will never in a million years ever allow that to happen, they're going to pump the bags of all equity because they need the tax receipts.
They absolutely have to. And it goes across the leverage goes from, the base layer of the consumer up to the corporations and the banks, all the way up to the sovereigns. It is
Yep.
the leverage is massive across the entire system. And that's a huge
There's
difference.
no way.
Did you guys see what they just launched in Europe today? Eric Balchunas tweeted this. I really like following him. He's the senior analyst at Bloomberg Intelligence that follows all the ETFs. He said they launched a bunch of seriously leveraged ETPs today in Europe, including 5x Magnificent 7, 4x semiconductors, 3x AI, and 2x super microcomputer.
Because why not, right? Just let
It's
it rip.
nuts.
Just let it rip. Absolutely insane. Yeah.
Which all of that just
to
accelerates.
the moon, baby, right?
Yeah, it just accelerates everything. It's just you're adding leverage. It's like a narcotic that you're pumping into somebody's body. Like it's going to give them like this crazy amount of energy to last the next. Susie can talk about this stuff way better than I can, but like, it gives you this crazy amount of energy. But with the side effect that you're just going to die, like you're killing your kidney, and like there's no way you can last another 2 weeks after you do that. But it gave you a burst of energy for 5 minutes or whatever. That's what all this leverage, doing these types of things, is just accelerating everything. It's accelerating it.
And so to your point, Natalie, I do believe that we could, just like Preston's talking about, have a massive credit event. It's kind of been my base case for a while, but they will come right in and rescue because they do not have a choice. They cannot have a deflationary cycle. It would be catastrophic for our debt market. Absolutely catastrophic. We can't have it. So we must have liquidity in the system, which means we must pump liquidity into the system. And if you think about it, how much did we print in 2008? $1 trillion. And then we printed over 5 trillion in 2020. I mean, it's going to be multiples of that. It's not going to be $6 trillion. It's going to be 10, 15 trillion. I mean, it's going to be massive amounts in order to keep the patient on life support. We've got to keep going. There's just no way around it. And that's why, it is prudent in my mind to sit on a little bit of cash, short-term treasuries, because you'll be able to take advantage of that, or just ride it out. Just ride it out, baby, because that gold and Bitcoin are going to make it through this. Gold will be way more manipulated. It's nowhere near as clean and clear as Bitcoin, but
What were you going to say, Susie?
I just speaking back to comparing what's going on now in the economy and with past times, isn't also this is something that always kind of rubs me whenever CPI numbers come out or any of the. Isn't everything so highly manipulated from the data to the news we get on the economy that I just don't trust anything I'm told anymore about. I feel like everything is released to just manipulate investors and human behavior.
Yeah, this is interesting. And we always talk about CPI and all that. And actually this morning I'm listening to Bloomberg. And one of the analysts, the bond analysts on there that I actually respect quite a bit, he was talking about how the Brookings Institute actually came out with a report that says that the fiscal spending has not been inflationary, is not added to GDP. And I was like, what? And so I went back and I pulled up the report and I'm looking at it, I'm staring at it, and I'm dissecting the methodology. And so I sent it off to Lynn. I was like, Lynn, have you seen this? I mean, because this doesn't seem to foot, it seems like it's missing something here. And so, she dug through it and she comes back, she's like, it's a very narrow scope. I agree with you. And it doesn't include things like, you could see it doesn't include second order measures, and it doesn't include like interest expenses on on debt. And so it's just like this report that they come up with that just it feeds into exactly what Susie's talking about, the political narrative that, oh, no, what we're doing is not inflationary. It's just supply and demand. It's just natural supply and demand. And there's just issues still with the supply chain that are left over from COVID. And it's just absolute nonsense. And who funds the Brookings Institute? Well, the Gates Foundation, and
Oh, wow.
there are lots of grants, and they don't say how many of the grants come from the U.S. government, but it's the Brookings Institute is where Claudia Sahm worked the one time that she was not actually at the Fed. So this is
so it's someone's going to ingest that information and make some decisions based on that.
Well, it got fed to Bloomberg. Somebody fed it to Bloomberg and they ate it up. And again, I actually like this reporter. He's really good. I'm not going to say names or anything, but he got fed it, didn't do the critical thinking around it, and just regurgitated it to the populace and said, you know what? It says that it's not actually inflation. Bullshit. Are you kidding me? We're running $2 trillion deficits at a time that we're not in a recession. Yes, it's inflationary. That's madness. It's insanity. So
I know with my normie friends, I mean, I can't, and I'm talking some who are, I would consider, fiscally very with a high IQ. But in the last 6 months, I've had them say to me like, oh no, our inflation is reduced. It's down to 2%. It's less than it was last year. I'm like,
because they see what they're supposed
Paul
to read.
Krugman would love your friends.
I know, right?
But no. Okay, but let's talk about that because Victoria came with me to Madeira and she met all you guys. So I'm sorry you weren't there, Susie, but you'll meet her next time you're in Vegas.
Love Vicky.
Where were you at, Susie?
So, but she was like, God, all these Bitcoiners are just. They are so curious and thoughtful, and they're like serious critical thinkers. I was like, exactly. Like, you cannot tell a Bitcoiner anything. You can explain something from your point of view, and then they'll take it away and they'll rip it up and dissect, and they'll come back and say, I don't think so. I think this is wrong right here. And it's like, well, okay, let me look at it. And I love it. It's great. They push you on everything. No matter what you put out there, if you have an audience, you better get ready for some pushback.
Yeah.
Because honestly, Susie, it's not your friends. It's everybody. It's everybody we're surrounded with. It's my family. It's like everybody we're surrounded with. They just listen to what they hear on TV or what they read in the normie news. And it's just, it's just what it is. It's difficult to think. It's hard.
No, but I didn't realize how much everything was manipulated too, especially with the CPI and what they don't count toward it. And then there's core CPI that they really pay more attention to, and then flip over to the jobs numbers. And that's like constantly seasonally adjusted. And that doesn't play into the reporting that we see. Hot economy. Everyone's working really because they have 3 jobs and they can't even afford what they used to.
That's a great example. So the employment numbers come out and instantly everybody's like, oh, these are great numbers. This is showing the economy's just clicking along. Yet nobody sits back. A few people do, but nobody sits back and immediately looks at the 2 different numbers. There's a household number and there's an establishment number. The establishment number has all the jobs that were created. The household numbers has all the jobs that are created for each person. So it's like, hold on a second. Why are these numbers so different? Well, because obviously people in households are holding more than one job. I mean, that's the obvious issue there. But, it's...
And part-time, and the jobs that they're adding are mostly to the public sector. They're government jobs. They're just spending government money. I don't know if you guys follow Jeffrey Gundlach, but he also recently reported in one of his presentations that fewer and fewer people are actually responding to those surveys. So they're not maybe as accurate as they used to be a couple decades ago. There's been like a dramatic 20% decrease in people actually responding.
Absolutely. And so if you're going to get on the phone, you're going to do a survey, right? So a couple things. Number one, if you're a business and you are scrambling for your life, the last thing you're going to do is get on a phone and do a fucking survey for the BLS. It's not going to happen. You're not going to answer the call. So it's naturally biased to the positive there. And then the second thing is you've got this Michigan, the Michigan sentiment numbers, right? And they come out every month, and they're like these big numbers that people point to, and how the economy's going, how people feel about the economy. How are you feeling? How are you feeling about prices? Where do you think inflation's going to go? And it's literally a survey of 600 people. I put this in my newsletter once. It's like if you took a football field, and the football field represented the entire workforce of the United States, the whole football field, this survey would be a representation of about 3 or 4 inches by 4. That's it.
James, that was what you were supposed to say on Fox Business before you got cut off, thanks to that technology glitch. It was all about that football analogy. I'm so glad you got to finally say it.
I got to say it my second time I was on there.
I want to add something to this CPI stuff.
Yeah.
If somebody said, Preston, I want you to control the price of everything. What is the thing you want to control? It would be CPI, because everything is constructed off of CPI. Everything. Yeah. It's if I tell you CPI is 2%, then you're saying, okay, so like risk-free fixed income should be 1% or 2% higher than that. Equity should be another 2% above that.
Inflation,
and so like everything,
the inflation protected bonds,
yes,
those treasuries are queued off of that. Yeah. The BLS numbers are cute, like the PC, the PC numbers are flat, like everything is off of that. Yeah, it's true.
But it's just a manipulated garbage metric, right? I mean,
but let's go back to first principles. And I say this all the time. People think that the Fed has 2 mandates. They have 2 mandates, which is stable prices and full employment. The only mandate they have is to make people believe in the dollar. That's it. That's their mandate.
Stabilize the treasury market.
That's all they care about.
Yeah.
James, you are fired up tonight.
He's fired up.
Wow. I mean, we're coming to 45 minutes here. I don't know if you guys want to start to give us, some wrap up thoughts, but wow, James, I mean, I don't know how much coffee you had today, but
you had a lot.
You are really intense.
On fire, James.
I don't hate it.
Susie just brings out his best.
Yeah. I had a long work day. It's like my 6 meetings, so I'm all fired up. Yeah.
No, but it is crazy. It's funny. When I left the news industry, or I was kind of transitioning, I was living in both worlds, but I always thought news was so crazy because it was 24/7. I mean, I had jobs where my phone could ring at 2:00 in the morning and I had to have my go bag ready and respond. But, Bitcoin is 24/7 too. Great. I wake up and I don't know what I'm waking up to because something pops off and then my day is shifted, but it's fun.
Do you check the price the middle of the night sometimes?
Middle of the night? No, actually, I rarely check the price now. And I always am kicking myself because I don't know if you guys did this during the long bear market. But I was one of those people where I'm like, oh, it's going to stick around this range for longer. I've got some more time. And then of course it goes up and I'm like, oh shoot. And then the second I buy it, at least like 5% dip. I mean, if you see it dip, just assume that I made a purchase of like $1,000 or something. Always. I mean, guaranteed. Like that. Natalie.
You and everybody else, Nat. You and everybody else. Don't worry.
No, my lesson from this last bear market is when Preston tweets that he is deploying all his free cash flow. Do that.
Hey, Susie, have people reached out to you after your talk about how you guys literally sold your house and bought Bitcoin? I mean, people reached out to me saying, oh my gosh, they're going to do that. Did you hear from people too? Because it seems like a lot of people maybe were at least thinking about it. I remember during the last bull market, Michael Saylor was like, take out a loan and just buy Bitcoins. But
well, I think that, especially in medical fields after COVID, that I just know so many miserable physicians and dentists. So I do think people watching that episode, I've probably met half a dozen people who are like, I'm working to do that same thing. Or I had my son's kindergarten teacher reached out to me and said, and I hadn't spoken to her in years. And she said, I just want to plan for retirement like that. What do? I want to learn about Bitcoin. So I love that. That's what that sparked is, that people are curious about it.
Yeah.
Do you miss Atlanta?
That is
Damn,
awesome.
I am
Do you
not
miss
missing
strong
Atlanta.
Lanta?
Like,
No.
yeah, no. I will say that retirement and Hawaii are not overrated.
They look good on you. You look relaxed. It's like that must be
It's
that
great.
island lifestyle.
It's great. It's very chill, and yeah, it's nice.
I love that. What are you guys most looking forward to, or anything else you want people to know or be watching out for?
I'm excited to meet Susie's husband next month. They've never met him. Yeah, it's about time.
Where?
Yeah, I've heard he's real.
At the Halving Party.
Yeah.
You've heard he's what?
Having
I've heard he's real. I heard he's a real person.
That'll be fun.
Yeah, he's excited. He's excited. He's generally not really interested in going to conferences and stuff. So the Halving Party, was so
Perfect.
happy to be able to get him there. And then we're doing a medical day. We're actually doing a mission while we're down in El Zante. So we'll be seeing patients.
Awesome.
So,
Is he bringing in any bourbon?
Of course.
Is he into Bitcoin the way that you are, or not as much?
Oh, no, not at all. Only in that he's like, I support you. He is retired now. He wasn't expecting to get retired. So he's like, yeah,
Oh.
whatever you
Oh.
say, dear.
Oh,
It's like,
what's he doing here?
Look who just joined us. Oh my goodness. Wow, Peter.
There he is.
what's up, brother?
Hi.
Peter.
I've got my phone. I've lost my voice.
Have you recovered from
Peter.
Vegas? Have you recovered from Vegas?
Susie?
you know that a beard is the male makeup, correct?
Yeah, and it's gone.
Yeah, I know.
Oh my God.
Did you lose it in Vegas?
No, I just took it off tonight.
Where are you?
I'm in my bedroom.
Where's Danny?
Oh, wow.
I sent Danny the link too.
And anyone can join. Why don't we just open
What?
it up to the
What time is it there, Peter?
It's 1:45.
Nice.
Oh my God, you're
Oh, my
hardcore.
goodness.
Nice.
Oh, wow.
I've lost my voice. We had football tonight.
You guys won.
Yeah, we were 1-0 down with 1 minute to go, and we won 2-1.
Wow.
That's awesome.
I can't wait.
I know.
I can't wait to go there for your conference. That's the last game, right?
Last home game.
Yeah.
Oh my
Cool.
God.
Awesome.
So Pete, was this win tonight pretty clutch? Like, did you guys need it for where you
Yeah.
guys? Oh, that's awesome.
It was so important, and we were like, I thought we were going to lose, and then we equalised in the 89th, and then we scored in the 95th minute, the 5th minute of
Oh
injury
my
time. It was
gosh.
Crazy.
crazy.
Amazing.
I've lost my voice because everyone
were
went absolutely
screaming.
crazy. Come on, cough.
No, thanks to Peter and James. I'm going to have to mark this episode as explicit. Thank you.
Sorry.
my first.
Sorry, not sorry.
No, I love it. We
Put the
miss you,
kitties
Peter.
away. Yeah,
I'm
put the
still
kitties-
waiting to talk to you about Craig, right? But it's fine.
Oh, shit, yeah.
It's fine.
We can talk. Yeah, we can talk about that prick soon.
He needs his voice for that one.
All right. Well, Peter, you can go get rest. Everybody, this was, like I said, just a random rant session we decided to plan via X when people start tweeting at us. So you never know. When you tweet us and suggest that we do a show, we might do it. You never know. So any
What was that? Is it over?
well, I mean, you can. What do you want to talk about without your voice?
I don't know.
Do you want to read
You
us
want
a
to see my
bedtime
you
story?
want to see my trainer collection?
Oh my
What do you
God!
want
What
to
is
talk about? Oh my God!
That's my sneaker collection.
Get that.
You're short Bitcoin.
What?
No, you're short. You're short dunks. Where's Danny? Is Danny not here?
Where is
No.
Danny?
Who's
Hold on.
the,
Let me check.
who's the in the image right behind you, Peter? Who is that?
That's my ex-wife.
Oh, wow.
No, it's not. I know, it's just a random picture I bought. I've never put it up.
Is that pencil or is it like a print?
It's the
It's a
It's
print.
a print.
Oh, shit.
Dang, dude.
I've just never put it up.
nice.
I've never actually decorated my bedroom.
You've decorated it with shoes. What are you talking
No, I've
about?
never.
Yeah, that
exactly.
decor is really nice. It's very Ted Lasso.
Very
I'd never
Ted
get away with that if I
Lasso.
had a girlfriend, would I?
Very, very Ted Lasso. Yes, it is.
All right, I'm gonna call that. We can still talk, but I'm gonna stop recording just in case it goes into a zone that is that I'm gonna need to kind of start to censor
You don't want me to
this.
get-
So this is
Do you want me to get Danny in?
not a censorship resistant podcast. I apologize.
Where's Danny?
Yeah,
Danny
blow
was
up
in
Danny,
video.
Danny.
Let me just see if I can get
Where
Danny.
is
Let me see if I can
Danny?
get Danny.
We
Hold
gotta
on.
get Danny.
Let me get Danny.
Hold on, Matt.
Danny, where the fuck?
What have I
That
done?
is off the rails.
What have I done?
This is what the Twitter conversation looked like. We're just making it real.
It is real.
This is why I'm so glad that Twitter Spaces doesn't have video, because it would just turn into this.
It'd be a disaster.
He just did.
Peed on his belly in his bed.
That was really unexpected.
Yeah, that was
Yes.
perfect.
I didn't even know that you could have this many people. So pleasantly surprised by Riverside. Thank you.
I just sent out the link. I didn't tell you guys that I sent out the link.
So funny.
You get wild on a Tuesday night, don't you?
I know. You see what happens? Oh, he's gone. He just left.
Looks like they left
And
us.
he's gone. Right.
I would be surprised.
Oh, he's back.
Oh, there he
He's
is.
back.
He can't do it.
Yeah.
Can't do it.
It's 1 a.m. Let him sleep.
He's
Let
in
him
Australia.
He's in Australia. It's the morning.
Don't make
Oh, okay.
excuses.
I thought he was in the UK. Never mind.
What did
All
you
right.
talk about tonight?
We talked about
Bonds.
you
Your big win.
mostly.
Coco.
We talked about the cocoa futures.
Everyone on this call,
Neon
apart from
resources.
Susie, everyone on this call apart from Susie's coming to Bedford. So Susie, you need to come to Bedford.
Yes, you do.
No, I'm coming.
She is coming.
I bought a
She is
ticket.
coming.
And I'm
No,
bringing
Susie's
Max.
coming. I'm not coming.
Oh yeah, but James has been before.
I have. It was awesome.
I'm
You're gonna
super
love it.
excited.
So much
I can't
fun.
Do you think I
Thank
should
you.
stay beardless? What do you think?
No.
No.
Cough.
Peter.
Sorry.
For the kids. For the kids.
You're not releasing this, are you?
Me 5
yeah.
million.
Going to. Might have to bleep you out. This is
That's fine.
this is my show, Peter. Do I do this to what Bitcoin did?
I don't know. No, but you don't ever swear. You never lie.
Cameo by Peter at the end.
Yeah, really, a really great one. A really
Yeah,
great
sorry.
one.
Yeah, you need to
I'm sorry.
put that on the show, description. Just make sure you watch till the end for a special guest appearance.
No one will care.
It might be the selling point.
No one will care. They'll end it early.
Pete, you don't look tired. You look like you're ready to
I'm
go out.
so tired.
Oh, are
My
you?
eyes are gone. Yeah. I've been
All
up
right.
for
All right, Peter, you go to bed. I'm going to stop recording. Thanks, everyone, for watching this. Links to all the stuff we mentioned down there or in show notes if you're listening to this on audio. Thanks so much. Thank you so much for checking out this episode of Coin Stories. If you want to connect more, make sure to check out this podcast on the Fountain app. It brings creators like me closer to the global community of listeners, and it's all powered by Bitcoin. You can share the best moments of this podcast and stream stats directly to your favorite podcast hosts. And you get paid when other listeners like your clips, comments, or playlists, or just for being a regular listener. Get rewarded for helping build this incredible community. Download the Fountain app today and subscribe to Coin Stories. This show is for entertainment and educational purposes only. Nothing should constitute as official investment advice, and you should always do your own research. My inbox is open if you want to share feedback or guest suggestions. Just reach out at Natalie@talkingbitcoin.com. I'll see you next time.